Assalamu alaikum. Didn't hear that, man. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Wa arsalahu rabbuhu rahmatan lil alamin. Today, inshallah, I'm going to be talking for about 30 up to 40 minutes about a very serious topic, which is religion versus and tradition. And before I start off with my topic, I'm going to talk briefly about the 1st of January 2012 and what it means to you as a Muslim living in Canada. Of course, some people are excited when a new year begins, but if you really sit back and reflect on your life, they say in Arabic, أن الشيء الوحيد الذي إذا زاد نقص هو العمر. The only thing that when it increases, it decreases is your age, your life in this world. The more you live, the closer you get to the end. And most of you who know me, you know that I usually start with a joke, but this is a very serious topic. I'm going to use some jokes within the speech, but I have to start off this way. So you have to sit back and reflect on your life. What did you do in the past year or in the past years of your life? There's no guarantee that any one of us will live as many years as you have already lived. I'm 34, and I don't know for sure if I'm going to live another 34. One thing I know for sure, after working for Rashid as an imam for 1 year, I will be lucky if I make it to 40. I'm telling you right now. It's very hard, believe me. Most of the time, when people come to me for counseling, and they have problems in their lives with their kids, or the husband with his wife, and the wife with her husband, they have fights, they shoot at each other. Yes, they do sometimes. And they call the police on one another, 911, in the middle of the night. And they come to my office bleeding, as usual, and I tell them, please, don't bleed on my couch, it's new. And yes, the one main reason why we have all these problems in our lives as youth and grown-ups and families and societies is mostly because our priorities are messed up completely. So if you are an individual and you put your desires in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you have a problem in your life. For example, when you sit and play video games for 12 hours and you don't pray on time, then you put your desires in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Go pray on time, then come back and play anytime you want. But you make sure that the 5 minutes when it is time to salah, you have to pray. Also, as families, when we put our cultures and our traditions before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have a problem. For example, when a father forces his daughter to marry her cousin who lives back home 10,000 miles away, they have nothing in common. He doesn't speak English, he doesn't know the culture. Now, the father is putting the culture, the tradition before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ said, no woman should be forced into a relationship or to marry someone that she doesn't like. Societies and communities always have problems when they put politics in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone knows what is halal, what is haram, but still they play politics, and for them Allah comes next, politics comes first. Okay, let's get down to business. Tradition versus religion. Okay, what is a tradition? What's a culture? Can anyone define culture for me? Yes? What's a culture?
Is it a tradition?
Yes.
Like something that passes down?
Yeah, exactly, mashallah. This is very good, man. This is sweet, man. Come. What's your name?
Adam.
Adam, mashallah. Nashman? Salam. Okay, so tradition is something that is passed on from a generation to another. the practices, the beliefs, the attitudes that we get from our parents, and our parents in turn also got these traditions from their parents. In Islam, there are two types of traditions. There are traditions that are acceptable. For example, are there any Somalis here? Please show your hand. Yes, mashallah. If you are a Somali and you eat bananas with food, mousse with berries, as they always do, there is nothing wrong. It's a cultural thing, but it is not against Islam. If you are an Indian lady and you wear the Indian sari, which covers the whole body and it's baggy and it's nice, this is acceptable in Islam. If you are a cowboy from Texas and you wear the cowboy hat, there's nothing wrong in Islam because it's acceptable Islamically to go this way. If you eat with a fork, or if you are Chinese or Japanese and you eat with the sticks, there's nothing wrong Islamically with this. It doesn't go against anything in the religion. And this type of tradition is acceptable Islamically. The other type, which is not acceptable, if it goes against the teachings of Islam. For example, is there anyone here from India originally? Yes. In India, according to the Hindu culture, women pay the dowry, the mahr, to men in India. This is the culture over there. And I wish so many guys here, they wish they were born and raised in India, so when they get married, they get money. Yeah, here's one. Some Muslims in India do the same thing. They follow the Hindu culture, which is in disagreement or contradicts the Islamic teaching. In Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4 of the Quran, it says that men have to give dowry or mahr, a marriage gift, to the ladies at the time of marriage. When a father pushes his daughter to marry her cousin against their will, this is tradition and it's against Islam. And so on and so on and so on and so forth. The examples are so many. And maybe we'll touch on some of them in our speech. So the first type is acceptable, the second one is not acceptable. We as Muslims living in Canada, there are two types of parents. Our parents can be classified into two groups. Those who came from back home, whether they came from the Middle East, from India, Pakistan, Somalia, and other places, they came here because they have a lot of political tension back home, a lot of corruption back home, so they came here seeking a better life. So they hate back home, they hate the cultures, and they hate the traditions from the bottom of their heart, and they try to be more Canadian than Canadians, right? So they hate their original countries, so they live here, they try to assimilate in the society, and they also teach their kids to be more Canadian, or to be more Canadianized, if I may use this word, than Canadians themselves. So they cut off all the relationships they have with back home. So this is the first type. The second type of parents are those who come here, and although they live in Edmonton, Canada, in North America, 10,000, 15,000 miles away from home, they always live with this perception that one day we will go home. And home to them is back home, India, Lebanon, Egypt, Somalia. So they have nothing to do with the culture here. They live in another planet. So some of them, they live here for 10, 15, 50 years, and they always tell you, we're not trying to integrate in the society because this is not home to us. How can we imitate the kuffar, man? The kuffar. We'll go there, we'll go back home one day, inshallah. Then after 200 years, they are still here, but they still live with the back home mentality, okay? In 2 minutes, we'll talk about assimilation and integration. They don't mean the same thing. Does anyone here know the difference between to assimilate and integrate as a Muslim in the Canadian society? Anyone? What does it mean to assimilate in the Canadian society and to integrate in the American society? Yes, we got the brother here.
Assimilate is when you change to another culture.
Can't hear you.
Assimilate is when you change to
Assimilate. Yes.
Another culture, but integrates the opposite.
Okay. But close, but not close enough. Yeah, the sister here in the back. Good. Integrate. This is assimilate. What is integrate? Exactly. MashaAllah. Thank you. Women are coming, man, I'm telling you. So, integrate is to preserve your own values, your own traditions, and your own beliefs, and morals and principles, and in the meantime, you accept and you take the good of the Canadian society. So if Canadians, for example, respect the law, this is what you do. If they aspire to get the highest degrees in the society, and to get the highest pay, and to get nice homes, nice cars, to live a decent life, while preserving your identity as a Muslim, while preserving your values, there is nothing wrong with this. But to lose your identity and follow other people. Assimilate is basically to imitate other people and to ignore and overlook and lose your Muslim identity. So for example, if people date, you date like them. If they drink, you drink like them. If they go high, they smoke weed and crack and dope and all those things, you know. This is what you do. If in Valentine's Day they run to the stores to buy red teddy bears and roses, this is what we do because we follow in their footsteps. Or in Halloween, you dress up in crazy costume like Shrek and you know Shrek? Yes. And the Shayateen, okay? Because you want to drive out the evil spirits. So this is assimilation, and this is not acceptable Islamically. You have to preserve your identity, and you can also take the best of the Canadian society. Of course, alhamdulillah, we have more freedoms here in Canada than we do in some Muslim countries. There is respect for the law, there's human rights, civil rights, and everything that some of us don't have back home. And this is something we should enjoy. But every now and then, at the Rashid, I get someone who comes to me and says, okay, my son is doing drugs. Or our friend was shot to death because he was selling drugs in the street. This is not acceptable, man. This is not acceptable. So this is the difference between tradition and religion, and also assimilation and integration. Why do some of us lose their identity and follow cultures, maybe the back home culture or the cultures from here, and lose their Muslim identity? There are several reasons. Number one, some of us, especially the older generation, they have what they call the inferiority complex. Inferiority complex. And I'll get to this in a minute. The Prophet ﷺ tells us in an authentic hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, كل مولود يولد على الفطرة فأبواه يهودانه أو يمجسانه أو ينصرانه. So the Prophet ﷺ says that every one of us is born Muslim, pure, clean, pre-formatted to accept Islam and to accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as his or her God. But it's the parents that make you whatever you become, anything else. They make you Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, a junkie, a drunkard, whatever. Most of the time, if you look at the people in this world, if you take religion as an example, 95% at least of the people in the world, they follow the religions of their parents. So, if someone is born in, take me as an example. If I was born in Latin America, of course my name would be Roberto Mustafa, and most likely I'll be Catholic. If I was born in France, my name would be Michel Mustafa, and most likely I'll be an atheist. If I was born in India, Or say, for example, Japan, I'll be Mustafa Khattab, and most likely I'll be Buddhist. Because people follow their parents. If your parents are Muslim, you're Muslim. If they are Hindu, you're Hindu. If they are atheist, most likely you'll be an atheist. So this is what I'm talking about. This is the tradition we follow other people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that whenever the Prophet ﷺ tried to correct the people of his time, and other prophets tried to correct other people of their time, they always gave the same answer. Inna wajadna aba'ana ala ummatin wa inna ala atharihim muqtadun. So the people always said, what you are teaching is new to us. We just walk in the footsteps of our parents. And they say in Arabic, a common mistake or tradition that is wrong is readily accepted by the people than a forgotten truth. If something is not known, people don't follow it, but they follow what is familiar to them even if it's wrong. So some people, they have the inferiority complex. They think when they look at the countries we have back home, Egypt, Somalia, other countries, that our people back home are backward. They are messed up completely, a lot of corruption. Now they look at the West and they say, look at these people. They have a lot of advances in technology and science, and these people are good, they are better than us, so we have to be like them so we can be as good as they are. And we have to cut off our relationship with back home because these people they're married, they're backward. So in order for us to break loose and to join, the advanced people. So this is number one, the inferiority complex. Number two, the educational system. Most of us, if you go to the public system of education, you are taught by who? مَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, right? So you don't have sound educational system when you go to the schools, right? And this is not a Muslim country, I know. If you go to a public school, make sure at least you get some Islamic knowledge from your parents, or from the masjid, or from the imam, and so on and so forth. At least know the basics of your faith, the values of your tradition. This is number two. Number three, the Islamic environment. If you look around in the streets, if you go to school, here and there, you don't see the Islamic values that, we get from back home. And this is the environment. I will give you a couple of examples from the Islamic literature. You probably heard of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, for example. How many of you heard of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? Raise up your hand. You know who Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was? So who was Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? Who was Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? Yes. We'll take the brother here. No, man. He was a great guy, but he was not a sheikh. Who was Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? Yeah, we'll take, not Adam. No, we'll take the brother with the glasses.
He was the son of Umar, and he was the Khalifa after Aisha.
Close but not close enough. Who was Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? Yes? He was? خامس الخلفاء الراشدين. أحسنت. ما شاء الله. He was a Khalifa, a ruler of the Muslim world that stretched from India all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was a young guy, and he was probably 10, 12 years old. And his father had a teacher for him. He made sure that he taught him educational Islamic manners and values and stuff. And he made sure that he prayed on time. So one time, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was late for Salah. So the teacher wrote to the father of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz ibn Marwan. And he told him, The teacher asked Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, why were you late for Salah? You came when the Salah was over. You didn't pray in Jama'ah in the masjid with the people. Why? There has to be a serious reason why you didn't come on time. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, it took me a long time for the lady, my servant who was combing my hair, to fix my hair the way I wanted, to make it stylish and, So the teacher wrote to the father of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz and said, your son was late for Salah because he was fixing his hair. What do you think the response was from the father of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz?
Shave it off.
Shave it off completely. So he doesn't have to worry about the style of his hair and he will be there on time. And Imam al-Shafi'i, when he was young, when he probably was your age, what's your name again? Adam? Adam. He was probably the age of Adam and he was walking in the market and singing poetry in Arabic. So a man came from the back and slapped him on the back and said, it's haram for someone your age to sing poetry and you don't study the Quran and fiqh and stuff. So he remembered the slap he got and he started to study Quran. He made hifz of the whole Quran and he became Imam al-Shafi'i, one of the most knowledgeable people of Islam, because of the environment around him. Imam Shafi'i and Imam Bukhari, two of the most knowledgeable scholars of Islam, they were orphans. Their parents, their fathers, died before they were born. Imam Shafi'i and Imam Bukhari. They were taught by whom? By their moms. Their moms used to work menial jobs to provide for them, and they became two of the most knowledgeable people of Islam. So this is what I mean by the Islamic environment. You see people around you doing something good, you follow their example. This is why it's easy for you in Ramadan to fast, because everyone around you is fasting. But if you break some days from Ramadan for any reason, then you start to fast after Ramadan, you are the only one in the house fasting, or in the school, or in the masjid, it becomes very hard for you. So this is the Muslim environment. Number 4 is the role model. If you ask anyone, most people about their role model in life, they usually mention the name of an actor, a dancer, Messi, if you follow Barcelona or any other team. So these are the role models. And I remember about 3 years ago, one guy came to me. He was like 13 years old, and you see how tall I am? Very tall, right? So he was much taller than me. This guy, 13 years old, and he was taller than me. And he said, Sheikh, and of course, I have to stand on my fingertips so I can hear him. He was very tall. And probably stand on a chair so I can hear him. So he said, who is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? I heard someone saying this name, but who is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? I never heard of this name. So I said, you don't know Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? He's not a basketballer, man. He's one of the great Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ. You never heard of him? Then I decided to teach a course on the lives of the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, where do we look for role models in our life? Of course, number 1, your parents, they have to be role models for you. You look for role models in the school, the teachers, your peers, your friends. When you go to the masjid, you look up to the people in the masjid who pray in the first lines, because mashallah they pray 10 times a day in the masjid, and mashallah they have alamat salah in their forehead, and so on and so forth. They are always in the masjid, they are always crying in the salah. You see a pool of tears in front of them in the masjid, man. So they are the role models. We always look up to them. So these are the people. You look up to the Imam, right? You think that the Imam, mashallah, is the most knowledgeable. He's a great guy, funny guy. I want to be like him one day. So these are the role models. So let's, for example, take our parents at home. If you want to learn something from your parents, man, They're always busy, okay? Working, your father is working, if he is a cab driver or a doctor or engineer, he has no time for you. He wants to have $1 million every year, so he got no time for you. He works 2 or 3 jobs, shifts, to provide, to put food on the table. He got no time for you. Your mom, she's always chatting on Facebook, talking to her mom for hours, watching TV. She got nothing, no time for you. And even if they have time for you, they have no educational or no Islamic background. They can't teach you nothing, man. They can't even recite Fatiha. So how can you learn from them if they don't have themselves, if they don't have Islamic knowledge? Or, what's even worse, if they tell you something, they teach you something, and they do the exact opposite. You see your father, man, coming to you and say, listen, smoking is haram. And they smoke, they breathe into your face with their cigarettes, man. If you smoke, man, you'll be an idiot. And he's holding the cigarette in his hand. What is this, man? Or if your mom tells you it's haram, if it's haram to backbite people. And she talks about people all the time, all the time. I remember a kid came to his father and he said that do women fly? Do women fly? So the mom said no humans fly. They got no wings. So he said, I heard my dad today talking to the secretary and saying in Arabic, Hamamat qalbi, you are the pigeon of my heart, you always fly. So the mom said, did he say that did your dad say this to his secretary? She said yes. Then the kid asked the same question, do women fly? She said yes, actually they do. This particular one your dad was talking to, she will fly, for sure. If we teach our kids to tell the truth, and we always lie. And I remember a story of someone who was calling to check on another person, and the little kid, the son, answered the phone. So the kid said, so-and-so is on the phone. Nabil Nashman was on the phone. He wants to talk to you, Dad. So the father said, I'm not here. So the kid told the man, my father is telling you that he's not here. They are pre-programmed, pre-formatted to tell the truth. We mess them up, okay? We teach them the wrong stuff. If we tell them to do something good, we do the opposite, then at least you look hypocritical to them. You tell them something, you do the exact opposite. So these are the parents, man. These are the people we always look up to. We learn from them. Let's forget about the parents. Let's take a look at the school. Of course, you go to the school, they always teach you, for example, teach you about the Christmas and Halloween and all that stuff as facts. And they tell you that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas, and not that he was discovered by the Americas, because how can you discover a place where 100 million people live? You were discovered by them, but you didn't discover them. Some people teach you that 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 1. Right? People teach you that, for example, whatever, I'm not going to get into details, man. Your friends at school, your peers that you always look up to them, you always try to imitate them. Every new thing that they do is cool, although it might be dangerous. Not everything that is new is cool. If you want, how do you want to be cool if you live in Edmonton, man? You are surrounded by snow 6 months of the year. It doesn't get any cooler than this. If you want to be cool, put yourself in the fridge. But don't imitate people blindly and do the dangerous things they do. You You want to try dope, weed, to be as manly as they are? This is not cool, man. This is not cool. And so on and so forth. The examples are so many. You do drugs, you sell drugs. The other day, I was coming from the graveyard, not because I was dead, but because we were burying someone. And on the way, we were rushing. Yeah, otherwise I would be walking around like a zombie. We were rushing to get to the masjid for Isha, and all of a sudden, I had a very good brother of mine. His name is Abu Hassan. He's almost 60 years old. And he was driving, I was sitting next to him, and he was taken to the masjid, and all of a sudden, 7 or 10 police cars, they came from all directions and they stopped us. So I looked at him and said, Abu Hassan, la hawla wa quwwata. What did you do, man? What did you do? He said, I didn't do nothing, man. I was with you all the time. It turned out to be that a kid, a youth, in front of us in a van, was selling drugs. And of course, you probably heard of the new technique. If you haven't heard of this one, don't try this technique. You'll go to jail. These guys, they work for pizza places, and they go to their customers to get them pizza, and below the pizza they have weed and cocaine and drugs. Very creative, right? But it took the guy to jail. La hawla wa quwwata. So these are the peers you look up to, and they always destroy your life. If you try to follow their example to be manly as they are, you do the haram stuff, then this takes you to jeopardy. Jeopardy. You know jeopardy in the beginning? Yeah, it's a good word. Now let's talk about the masjid, man, the masjid. This is our last resort, okay? This is our last resort. We go to the masjid, man. The people of God, man, they're all over the place, man. And you will learn a lot from them. And you go to the masjid, man, and you see people fighting inside the masjid. People with canes, fallen teeth, no hair, and they look like angels. The only thing you're missing is their wings and the halo over their heads, but they are fighting all the time. I'm going to tell you a story from the U.S. One imam told me that sometime in Ramadan, in the U.S., in the masjid, they had 2 imams in the masjid, and they started fighting. The old folks in the masjid, they started to fight over who should give the khutbah for Jummah. This imam, Mr. X, or this imam, Mr. Z. So there were 2 groups. The Arab in the masjid, they said, we like Mr. X because he speaks Arabic, man, he's from Lebanon, man, and he likes baklawa, man, makluba, and all that stuff. So we want our man to give khutbah because he speaks Arabic. We don't speak no English, man. Okay? The other ones were from Pakistan. Good food, spicy food, mashallah, hot-tempered. And they said, we want our man to give the khutbah. Mr. Y, he speaks Urdu. No English man, we want to listen to our man give the khutbah. So mashallah, they started a fight in the masjid. They used chairs, baseball clubs, nuclear weapons, all weapons of mass destruction. They are Muslims, man. Of course, you follow the Fox News. So they got all these weapons, man, in the masjid, so they started beating each other up, and they started to bleed on the carpet and all that stuff. One of them, mashallah, a good guy, like Nabil Nashman, he just called 911 to end the fight and make peace. Again, look at this. The people were fighting in the masjid, killing each other off and bleeding on the carpet. When the police officers came, the people were busy fighting. So the police officers walked on the carpet with their shoes. They got inside with their guns, man, to stop the fight. So when people saw them walking on the carpet with their shoes on, the people got so mad. The Arab brothers and the Pakistani brothers, bid'ah, officer, this is haram, man. This is haram, man. How can you walk on the carpet with your shoes, man? La hawla wa quwwata. So walking on the carpet with your shoes is haram, but fighting and hitting people with the chair and baseball club and bleeding on the carpet is not haram. How many Somalis are here? Yes, you're not Somali, man. This guy's not Somali, you're Egyptian. They have this wonderful saying in Somali. I'm going to say it first in Somali and I'll translate it to Urdu so everybody will understand. You know this saying? It's a beautiful one. It says basically, I don't need the meat of dead animals, but I drink the soup of the meat of dead animals. It's exactly the same thing. Walking a carpet with your shoes on is like beating people and bleeding in the masjid. It's exactly the same thing, right? Most of our masajid in Canada, in the US, they are all male-oriented. This is for a fact, right? Male, old, Arab, or whatever, oriented. They are not youth-oriented. They are not women-oriented. This is the fact, okay? This is the fact. So they always want to run the masajid in Edmonton, in Los Angeles, California, whatever, as if they were in Beirut, or Cairo, or Mogadishu, right? With the back home mentality. For example, if you want to give a khutbah in English, man, because most of your audience is English speaking, then tell you, it's a bid'ah, man, bid'ah. The Prophet didn't speak no English, man. You have to give the khutbah in Arabic. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. If I give the khutbah in Arabic, no one will, 95% of the people here would not understand what I'm saying. And the Quran says, we never sent a prophet except someone who spoke the language of the people. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. So imagine if God sent a prophet who speaks Urdu to Lebanon, who speak what? What do they speak in? Arabic, yes, they speak Arabic in Lebanon. You will not understand a single word from the guy. He has to speak Arabic so people understand. Okay. Now when the youth, people like yourself go to the masjid, and you go early, mashallah, because you love the imam, I'm sure some do. If you go to the masjid, you want to sit right in front of the imam and to get the knowledge pure from the imam. You sit under his feet, so you always see someone from the old folks giving you the wicked look and telling you to go to the back of the masjid. When you go to the middle of the masjid, he tells you, if this is not the back of the masjid, this is the middle of the masjid. I'm telling you about the last row outside, because you are young. So for them, young means idiot, right? One of the Sahaba, his name was Amr, and he was 6 years old, and this hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim, and he was leading salah for his people. He was their imam at the age of 6 and 7 because he knew more Quran than he did. So he was leading salah for them. And people behind him, they were 50 and 60 years old, and he was the imam. So this is with regard to the masjid. Most masajid, for example, they don't have youth in the board of the masjid. Because, as I said, the masajid are always male or oriented. Now, we go to the imams. These are some of the reasons why we follow our cultures, we don't get Islamic knowledge, we always run away from the masajid. Another reason is the imam, okay? Some of the imams, to start with, 40% of the masajid in North America have imams. 60% of the imams, the other masajid, they don't have imams. So basically the prayers and the lectures are led or given by people who have no Islamic educational background. Just volunteers, man. You get a brother who's a cab driver just because he knows Al-Fatiha to lead Salah. You get a brother who is a doctor who has a PhD in mechanical engineering to lead salah, just because he has a PhD. And he doesn't know how to say Fatiha, okay? What does PhD stand for? PhD, what does it stand for? PhD, what does it stand for? PhD, it's easy, man. Huh? Don't Google it. Just Google it, man. Philosophy doctor? Yes. No. The letters PhD, what does it stand for? Yes. Again? No. Okay, PhD stands for two things. Number one, it stands for philosophy doctor, PhD, or it stands for permanent head damage. It's the exact opposite, okay? So, now let's talk about the 40% of the masajid that have imams. Okay. Most of the imams, most of them, in Canada and in America, they don't speak English. And this is a fact. I've been to conferences for imams from Canada and the US. Most of them didn't speak English. Their English was closer to Chinese than English. Because most of them, they studied Islamic Arabic, then they came here, they started to pick a word from here, a word from there, and they started at a very old age, so English was not easy for them. So most of the imams, they don't speak English. Of course, they don't know how the youth, like yourself, think because of their age. And the other thing is, they know nothing about technology, they know nothing about nothing. So, when it comes to computers and cameras and YouTube and PowerPoint presentations and iPad, imams walk around like dinosaurs because they live in the cave, the Stone Age. They have nothing to do. So if you ask about PowerPoint presentations, they will tell you it's haram. It's haram. Because they think it's something haram. They think it's weed or something haram. The other thing is, when the youth go to the imams seeking advice, first of all, as we said, they don't speak English. And number two, the imams always give you traditional answers to very complicated issues. And this is very important. The answers that the imams give in Egypt or Lebanon or Somalia, some of them work for us, but some of them don't. Because our issues that we have here, some of them don't exist back home. For example, one of the imams said that a youth came with his father to the imam. So the father brought his son to the imam and said, Imam, my son wants to have a girlfriend. My Muslim son wants to have a non-Muslim girlfriend. So the Imam, of course, he studied the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that a young man, a youth, came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, إذنني في الزنا. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم أترضاه لأمك أترضاه لأختك فقال لا يا رسول الله. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فكذلك الناس لا يرضونه لأمهاتهم ولا لأخواتهم ولا كذا. ثم وضع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يده على صدره ودعا له بخير فقال اللهم اغفر ذنبه وطهر قلبه وحصن فرجه. فقال الشاب والله ما كان شيء أبغض إلي بعد ذلك من الزنا. So a youth came to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. Say صلى الله عليه وسلم. Let's speak now. صلى الله عليه وسلم. So a youth came to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم and said, O Prophet of God, make it permissible for me to take a girlfriend and to commit adultery. So the Prophet, of course, the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, people like Umar and some other Sahaba, they wanted to rip off his head, right? So the Prophet ﷺ told them, leave him alone. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, come closer. Would you allow your sister to take a boyfriend? He said, no. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, would you allow your mom to take a girlfriend? No, sorry. That is so gay. So, then the Prophet ﷺ said, would you allow your cousin to take a boyfriend? So he said no. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, and people don't like their mothers, their sisters, and their daughters to take boyfriends. Then the Prophet ﷺ put his hand on the chest of the youth and said, oh Allah, forgive his sins and purify his heart and make him chaste. So this youth later used to say, Wallahi, nothing has become more hateful to me and detestable to my heart than committing adultery because of the prayer of the Prophet ﷺ. So this poor imam, when the father brought his son to the sheikh, who doesn't speak English, a sheikh who hasn't lived here enough to understand the culture and the mentality, he just decided to quote the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So he went to the youth and he said, brother, would you allow your sisters to have a boy's friend? So the kid said, if she wants to, that's fine with me. So again, the Imam was giving a traditional answer. It doesn't work for this generation. You have to talk rational to them. You have to convince them in a rational way. Of course, the traditional answer works for the people from back home, but here you have to work a little bit more if you understand the culture and the mentality of the youth. Also, when imams try to correct people, and most people don't like to be corrected, this is for a fact, they don't say something positive before they correct something. And this is something good that we learned from the Prophet ﷺ, that when he never wanted to correct someone, sometimes he said some good things about them, and also in some other examples, he corrected them in private, not in front of the people. The Prophet ﷺ didn't tar and feather people. He corrected them in private in a nice way. يعني في الحديث الصحيح, there is an authentic hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he didn't pray at night. He prayed the 5 prayers, but he didn't pray extra prayers at night. So the Prophet ﷺ said, نعم الرجل عبد الله لو كان يصلي من الليل. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Abdullah ibn Umar is a great guy, but if only he prays a little bit more at night. So the Prophet ﷺ said something positive about him. Then he said, I wish he can do this. So the narrator of the hadith says, by Allah, Abdullah ibn Umar, after what the Prophet ﷺ said about him, he used to stand the whole night in prayer, and he used to sleep a very small portion of the night. Because of the nice way the Prophet ﷺ corrected him. Now, imagine if your father or your mother wants you to correct you or to get you to do something and they make you look like an idiot. And vice versa. If the imam, for example, people come to me for the halaqas to recite Quran with tajweed, imagine if a brother is stumbling in reciting the Quran and I go to them and I say, you're an idiot, man, you're an idiot. You are 50 years old and you don't know how to say Fatiha with tajweed, man, get out of here, man, get out of here, out of here. Wallahi, they will never learn anything. But if you tell them, if you sweet talk them, you say, MashaAllah, Wallahi, your voice is beautiful, man, very wonderful. You recite like Nabil Nashman, man. Very, very beautiful, man. If only you can just learn the tajweed and fix your pronunciation, wallahi, they will be motivated and they will do a little bit more. So you have to say something nice about people before you correct them and criticize them. The last example I'm going to give, and this is one of the most beloved stories to my heart from the Prophet ﷺ. And this is probably the 100th time for some of you to hear this story, but I love it so much. And most of the people, they never heard of it before. Khawat ibn Jubayr al-Ansari. He was a youth. And he just accepted Islam in Medina. After the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, so Khawat accepted Islam, and he was a youth, very, very young. So he went out with the Prophet ﷺ to a camp, and in the break, he was walking around, and he saw beautiful women chit-chatting outside the camp. Pretty women, pretty ladies. So when he saw them, he ran back to his tent, he put on his nicest clothes, and he went fast to the lady, faster than light. And he sat with the ladies and he started to chit-chat and higgle and all that stuff with the ladies. And all of a sudden, the Prophet ﷺ came out and he saw Khawat ibn Jubayr al-Ansari sitting with the ladies and cracking jokes with them and having a nice time with them. So Khawat ibn Jubayr said, by Allah, when I saw the Prophet ﷺ, I couldn't speak because the Prophet ﷺ was so dignified, honorable, and he was so charismatic. I couldn't say anything. I was astonished. So the Prophet ﷺ came to him and said, what are you doing here with the ladies, man? So Khawat radiallahu anhu said, Wallahi, I didn't know what to say. The only thing that came to my mind at that point was, I said to him, O Prophet of Allah, I have a wild camel, rebellious camel, and these ladies, mashallah, may Allah put it in their mizan of hasanat and give them a great reward. Man. They are making a rope for me so I can tie my camel so it doesn't run away. So he said, by Allah, I knew I was alive. And the Prophet ﷺ knew I was alive. But still, the Prophet ﷺ smiled at me and he left. He didn't say anything. Then he said the next day, this is authentic hadith in Sahih al-Tabarani, the collection of authentic hadith by al-Tabarani. So he said, I was walking the next day in the street and I took the turn and all of a sudden I saw the Prophet ﷺ walking in front of me. So I slowed down. I don't want to see him no more. So the Prophet ﷺ looked back and he saw me. And the Prophet ﷺ slowed down so I can catch up with him. I stopped, so the Prophet ﷺ stopped and looked at me and said, come here, come here, come here. By the way, what happened to your wild camel? You were telling me about yesterday. So I said, La hawla. I was so embarrassed I couldn't say anything. Then he said the next day, I was walking and I heard the Prophet ﷺ was walking behind me and people started to give him salam, assalamu alaikum Rasulullah. So I knew he was coming after me. So I started to walk fast. The Prophet ﷺ started to walk faster than me. He caught up with me. And he said, assalamu alaikum Abdullah. Ma fa'ala shabadu jamali. Assalamu alaikum Abdullah. What happened to your wild camel, man? You were telling me about. So he said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I didn't know what to tell him. Then he said, the day after, I was in the masjid praying Tahiyyatul Masjid. I was standing in the middle of the masjid. Then the Prophet ﷺ came in, he stood next to me and he prayed 2 rak'ahs. Then he finished and he sat next to me. And when I saw the Prophet ﷺ sitting next to me, I knew he was coming for me. I made the salah very long. I recited the longest surah in the book. So he would get bored and leave. So the Prophet ﷺ came closer to me and said, I'm waiting for you, and I got all day. So cut it short, please. So he said, La hawla wa la quwwata. This is gonna go for years. So he said, Wallahi, I will tell the Prophet ﷺ something to put his heart at ease and to leave me alone forever. So after he made salam, he salamed out, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Prophet of Allah, the good news is, my camel has accepted Islam and it is not running away anymore. That's it. So the Prophet ﷺ تبسم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ودعا له بخير. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم smiled and he made a dua for him. He prayed for him. Okay. This is the problem. What is the solution? In 2 minutes, I'll give you the solution, then I will leave. The first one, education. The second one is education. And number 3 is education. We have to educate ourselves about our Islamic beliefs, traditions, and also values. That's all we need, education. Number 2, a Muslim is like a bee. B-E-E. A bee goes to the farm, okay? Flies around. There are so many roses in the park, or in the garden, whatever. The bee knows where are the flowers that have the best nectar, okay? So they go to the roses, but they don't go to the junk. And that's all you need to do. All you need to do is pick up the good stuff and leave alone the junk. We have our Islamic values, our Islamic traditions. There are so many good things in the Canadian culture, as I said, democracy, freedom, respecting the law, so on and so forth. You can get good degrees here in medicine, in engineering, all that stuff, mechanical engineering. And you can be a doctor, engineer, you get a very high pay, you live a wonderful life. There is nothing wrong with this. But you also need to have our Islamic values and our Islamic principles. Number 3, we need our youth, people like yourself, to start taking roles in the masajid, to start taking responsibilities in the house. The youth, they need to be empowered to take responsibilities in the house, in the masajid, and to help with uplifting and building their communities. Maybe this is a topic for another lecture. And I stop right there, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins, to accept our good deeds, and to give us the best in this life, and the best in the next life. Whatever I said good in this lecture is only from Allah. Whatever bad things, wrong things I said are from me, and from the shaitan, and from Google and Wikipedia. So you have to forgive me. Thank you very much. Jazakallah.